Okay. My name is Melissa Cahnmann-Taylor, and I am professor for this course in the Department of Language and Literacy Education. I ask you all to share a boundary crossing experience, and recently I crossed a boundary that has been very moving for my life, or maybe I should say that that boundary is crossing me. I want to share with you what happened in June of 2023 as the Munich city government had invited me to read a poem at a city-sponsored ceremony to honor descendants of Holocaust victims and survivors. It was then that I stood at 4 Trottenwolf Strasse and recited a poem in the courtyard where once my great aunt Clementine, a writer, and her husband Max Kramer once lived. The Munich Gestapo had took over my relative's home there, and still today the Munich police operate out of that location. Except that now on June 13th, the chief of the Munich City Police issued myself and my family a public apology. Together, we moved from that location also to 12 Sophie Stellistrasse, where my grandfather's childhood home and that of his family was forced to sell to the Nazis. The current neighbors provided us with food and drink. They pulled chairs from their homes and were ensuring our comfort. At both of these residences in Munich, the city has installed plaques either on the home walls or on posts that they call commemorative signs, bearing the images of those who've died, including those of my relatives, their birth dates and death dates, and the dates on which they were sent to Nazi concentration camps, some of whom never to return. I visited graveyards of my ancestors who were documented citizens of Bavaria dating back to the late 1700s. I was vaguely aware of this history as a young person, but it was a different experience entirely to stand there, to read my last name appearing in chipped paint on so many old gravestones. Since my return, I have learned that as of 2021, the German government has issued an opportunity for any descendant of Jewish Holocaust survivors, those forced to flee between 1933 and 1945, can now legally apply for citizenship. The application contents required many details about my grandparents, my grandfather's parents, my parents, marriages, dates of birth and death, documentation of home addresses in Munich, and dates when the surviving relative was forced into exile. My grandfather had left Munich in 1936 when it occurred to him he couldn't go to university. He'd been forced to leave law school because he was a Jew in 1934, and then he was forced from his secondary employment at a bank in 1936 when Jewish businesses were all shut down. When he asked his uncle, Joseph Schulein, what he should do, his uncle counseled him to leave Germany with these words: "If I had to shovel coal in Hawaii, I would go." Of course, because my family, once owners of Lowenbrau beer, were forced out of their companies, their businesses, their large homes, and into small attics, and ultimately into their premature deaths. So now it's so strange to be using the German language to apply for this citizenship opportunity. I have the Google Translate tab open on my screen. I put so many German words into it, and to the Office of Naturalization of Victims of Nazi Persecution and their descendants. My colleague invited me to audit her advanced beginner German class this fall. The words have so many syllables, and when I'm using the library audio language learning tool, these words feel like dried pretzels in my mouth. The boundary my grandfather crossed, not by choice, in 1936 to America, never to see his parents again, is one that I am now crossing back, applying for myself and my children for rights that were forcibly removed from our heritage at a time that I used to think was so long ago. On this journey, I stood in the place of my family's homes, their beer gardens, their synagogue, the place where Hitler first announced his attempted overthrow of the Bavarian government in 1923. Hitler was imprisoned for this brazen act of treason and sentenced to 5 years in prison, for which he only served 8 months because of his sympathizers who let him go free. But during that time, he authored his famous book, Mein Kampf, which led only years later to his great political success and to the Jewish people's decimation. My grandfather gone in 1936, my great uncle was forcibly removed from his home and sent to the Dachau concentration camp that we visited on this journey, saw his image in numerous of the horrific rooms where so much violence and blood was shed. My great-grandparents, great aunt and uncle, and 6 million Jewish people were exterminated. I am crossing this boundary in terms of language, terms of citizenship, in some small way as a form to accept the apology that the German government and so many German people are offering to my family. Boundaries can be crossed